Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Ukrainian military has destroyed or damaged a significant number of vessels in the Black Sea Fleet, including a submarine. Lacking major warships of their own, Ukrainian forces have successfully employed unmanned naval drones and long-range anti-ship missiles to strike the Russian fleet. This campaign has become a prime example of asymmetric naval warfare. Ukraine lost a massive portion of its fleet after the annexation of Crimea in 2014. During the initial weeks of the full-scale invasion, they had virtually nothing to counter the powerful Russian task force. However, coastal missile systems, air-launched cruise missiles, drones, and remote-controlled boats gradually turned the sea into a danger zone for Russian vessels. This threat extended not only to the Ukrainian coast, but also to heavily defended bases in Sevastopol and Novorossiysk. The Montreux Convention played a major role. When the full-scale war broke out, Turkey closed the straits to warships of the warring parties, with the sole exception for vessels returning to their home bases. Consequently, Russia lost the ability to transfer warships from its other fleets into the Black Sea to quickly replace its losses. Therefore, every Russian ship destroyed or seriously damaged carried strategic importance for the overall course of the war. At the outset of the invasion in 2022, the Russian fleet numbered around 80 vessels. These included large cruisers, landing ships, submarines, patrol boats, and minesweepers. Business Insider compiled a timeline of Ukrainian strikes on the Russian fleet. The Russian naval grouping comprised ships built for different roles. The guided missile cruisers and frigates provided air defense and could launch cruise missiles. Large landing ships were designed not only for amphibious assaults, but also for transporting equipment and ammunition. Project 636.3 submarines and small missile ships served as launch platforms for Caliber missiles. Patrol vessels guarded sea lanes and bases, while minesweepers cleared paths through mined waters. Russia's first significant loss was the landing ship Saratov. Ships of this class were built to transport troops and heavy armor, with the capability to land them directly onto an unprepared beach. At the time of the strike, Russian forces were using the port of Berdyansk as their primary logistical hub on the occupied coast of the Sea of Azov. On March 24, 2022, the Ukrainian military struck this vessel with a Tochka-U ballistic missile while it was docked in the port of Berdyansk. The Saratov could carry approximately 400 troops, along with 20 main battle tanks or 45 armored vehicles. Following a series of explosions and a massive fire, the Saratov sank at the pier. Two other landing ships, the Tsesar Kunikov and the Novocherkassk, sustained damage but managed to move away from the strike zone. The Russians later raised the hull of the Saratov, but restoring the ship was no longer feasible. This incident demonstrated that even a captured port deep behind enemy lines offered no guarantee of safety for naval vessels. In April 2022, the Russian Black Sea Fleet suffered a catastrophic blow. On April 14th, Ukrainian forces sank its flagship, the guided missile cruiser Moskva. This marked the first loss of a Russian flagship in combat since the Russo-Japanese War in the early 1900s. The Moskva was a guided missile cruiser, the largest warship in the Black Sea Fleet. Her main strike weapons were 16 P-1000 Vulcan heavy anti-ship missiles. For air defense, the ship carried the S-300F long-range system, as well as short-range anti-aircraft systems. It was this exact combination of a command post, radars, and powerful air defense that made the loss of the cruiser so incredibly painful for the entire fleet. At the beginning of the invasion, the Moskva provided air cover for other Russian warships and helped capture Snake Island in late February 2022. Later, Ukraine struck the cruiser with long-range Neptune missiles. The Ukrainian side reported 2 hits from the Neptune coastal missile system. Russia acknowledged a fire and the detonation of ammunition, but did not confirm a missile strike. They claimed the cruiser sank while being towed in a storm. However, the United States publicly confirmed that the ship was indeed hit by 2 Ukrainian missiles. Following the loss of the Moskva, Russian surface vessels began operating more cautiously and kept further away from the Ukrainian-controlled coast. The Neptune system was developed based on the Soviet Kh-35 anti-ship missile, but it received Ukrainian components, a new control system, and a land-based mobile launcher. The successful use of this weapon against a much larger ship proved that coastal defense can change the behavior of an entire fleet, even without having cruisers or destroyers of its own. Vasily Beck, June 2022. The Russian rescue tug was struck on June 17, 2022. The Ukrainian military reported striking it with 2 Harpoon anti-ship missiles. This attack marked the first time Ukraine hit a Russian vessel using anti-ship weapons provided by Western partners. The Vasily Beck was a rescue tug designed to assist ships in distress, perform towing operations, fight fires, and support diving work. At the time of the strike, it was heading to Snake Island, and according to the Ukrainian military, it was transporting personnel, weapons, and ammunition. A Tor land-based anti-aircraft system was also spotted on its deck, intended to reinforce the island's air defenses. Video from a Bayraktar TB2 drone captured the successive impact of 2 missiles. Ukrainian officials linked the operation to anti-ship weapons received from partners, although the first official reports did not name the specific type of missile. Therefore, the version of events pointing to the use of Harpoon missiles should be considered the most plausible assessment. Ivan Golubets, October 2022. The Russian minesweeper Ivan Golubets sustained damage during a massive attack on Sevastopol on October 29th. This was one of the first large-scale combined attacks on the main base of the Black Sea Fleet. The Russian Ministry of Defense claimed that 7 naval and 8 aerial drones were involved, admitting only minor damage to the minesweeper. Released footage from the cameras of the sea drones showed that the vehicles managed to breach the protected waters and get close to the warships. The Ivan Golubets is a seagoing minesweeper. Ships like this hunt and neutralize naval mines while maintaining safe routes for other forces. Even limited damage to this vessel was highly significant, as the mine threat in the Black Sea remains severe. Following the attack, Russia reinforced its barriers, observation posts, and other defenses at the entrances to Sevastopol Bay. Olenigorsky Gornyak, August 2023. On August 4, 2023, a Russian warship sustained significant damage after being hit by a Ukrainian unmanned naval explosive drone. The Olenigorsky Gornyak was a large landing ship of Project 775, designated as Rapucha class by NATO. Before the war, it was part of the Northern Fleet, but was transferred to the Black Sea prior to the invasion. With the Turkish Straits closed, returning or replacing this vessel became extremely challenging. The attack occurred near Novorossiysk, a Russian coastal base previously considered safer than Sevastopol. Footage clearly showed the ship listing heavily to its port side while being towed. This incident demonstrated the extended reach of naval drones and compelled Russian commanders to anticipate threats even on the eastern shores of the Black Sea. Minsk, September 2023. On September 13, 2023, another Rapucha-class landing ship, the Minsk, was struck while undergoing maintenance in a dry dock in Russian-occupied Crimea. Like the Olenigorsky Gornyak, the Minsk was a Project 775 vessel. It originally belonged to the Baltic Fleet and arrived in the Black Sea just before the invasion. At the time of the strike, it was situated in a dry dock at the Sevastopol Marine Plant. Following the attack, photographs revealed a heavily damaged superstructure, hull damage, and evidence of a large fire. Destroying a ship in a dry dock presented a dual problem. Russia not only lost a landing vessel, but also temporarily lost the use of a critical repair facility. Repairing a large warship with complex combat and propulsion systems is exceedingly difficult in occupied Crimea, particularly when the shipyard itself remains vulnerable to further precision strikes. Rostov-on-Don, September 2023. The submarine Rostov-on-Don was struck on the very same day, September 13th, suffering catastrophic damage. The Rostov-on-Don was a Project 636.3 diesel-electric submarine, known to NATO as the improved Kilo class. It entered service in 2014. These submarines were designed to hunt surface ships and other submarines, conduct intelligence gathering, and stealthily strike land targets. Due to its exceptionally quiet underwater operation, the Kilo family earned a reputation for being very difficult to detect. A key capability of the Rostov-on-Don was its ability to launch 3 M14 caliber cruise missiles directly from its torpedo tubes. In 2015, it launched missiles from the Mediterranean Sea against targets in Syria. During the conflict with Ukraine, these caliber-equipped submarines allowed Russia to conduct strikes while remaining far more concealed than surface warships. At the moment of the attack, the submarine was in a dry dock, completely unable to dive or maneuver. Subsequent photographs showed a massive breach in the forward pressure hull and extensive damage near the crew's living spaces. This marked the first instance of a submarine being hit by cruise missiles during this war, and one of the rare occasions in history where a combat submarine sustained such severe damage while in a dry dock. Russia announced plans for its repair. However, restoring a compromised pressure hull, electrical systems, sonar equipment, and internal machinery is a highly intricate process, even at a specialized shipyard. In August 2024, Ukrainian military forces reported another strike on the already damaged Rostov-on-Don in Sevastopol, stating that the submarine sank while at its moorings. Ultimately, the extensive repair efforts failed to return this vessel to operational status. Askold, November 2023. The ship Askold was hit on November 4th during a strike on the Zaliv shipyard. It never even had the chance to become part of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The Askold was a Project 2280 Karakurt-class small missile ship, built in Kerch. These ships have a universal launch system for 8 caliber or Onyx missiles. Despite their relatively light displacement, they operate as mobile platforms for long-range weapons. At the time of the attack, the vessel was undergoing final sea trials and had not yet been officially commissioned into the fleet. Footage showed severe damage to the center of the hull and the superstructure right next to the missile launchers. Destroying the ship before it entered service meant that Russia lost this combat vessel before they could even use it. Novocherkassk, December 2023. The Russian ship Novocherkassk was struck near Feodosia on December 26th. It was a Project 77-5 large landing ship. On the night of December 26, 2023, Ukrainian aviation hit the docked vessel with cruise missiles. A massive explosion and large-scale fire indicated that ammunition or hazardous cargo detonated on board, although its exact payload was never officially disclosed. Satellite images of the port showed that only debris remained of the upper section of the ship. Russian authorities confirmed damage, while Ukraine claimed the vessel was completely destroyed. Since Feodosia is located further from Ukrainian positions than Sevastopol, this strike proved that moving ships between Crimean ports no longer guaranteed their safety. Ivanovets, January 2024. During a night operation on January 31st, Ukrainian Special Forces sank the small warship Ivanovets using 6 naval drones. The Ivanovets was a Project 21 Molnia-class missile boat, known to NATO as the Tarantula class. The main weapons of the ship were 4 Moskva supersonic anti-ship missiles. For defense, it had one 30mm AK-630 rapid-fire gun. However, video of the attack demonstrated that traditional naval defense is powerless against multiple low-profile targets attacking from different directions in the dark. The operation took place near Lake Donuslav in western Crimea. The video shows the Ivanovets maneuvering and firing back, but the first hit slows it down and breaches the hull. Subsequent drones strike the exact same vulnerable spot, accelerating the sinking. This tactic became a signature move for Ukrainian forces. First, a group of drones exhausts the defenses, and then a series of precise strikes leaves the crew with no chance to save the ship. Caesar Kunikov, February 2024. This ship was sent to the bottom on February 14th using Magura naval drones. The Project 77-5 large landing ship had already been hit in Berdyansk back in March 2022. Almost 2 years later, it was caught off the southern coast of Crimea. Ukrainian intelligence reported that Magura V-5 attack drones were used for the strike. This is a remote-controlled boat capable of covering long distances with a powerful explosive payload. Its low hull barely sits above the water, making the drone very hard to spot at night or in rough seas. The video shows several hits to the port side of the Caesar Kunikov. After that, the ship listed heavily and went under. For landing ships with their massive cargo bays, holes near the waterline are fatal, as water instantly floods the empty spaces and the vessel loses stability. Sergei Kotov, March 2024. Ukraine tried to sink the Russian ship Sergei Kotov more than once. Ukrainian forces attacked the $65 million vessel 3 times, in July, August, and September 2023, before drones successfully sank it on the morning of March 5, 2024. The Sergei Kotov was one of the newest patrol ships of Project 22-160 and joined the fleet in 2022. This class was designed for long patrols, securing maritime areas, and escort missions. The ship featured a helicopter pad, a 3-inch gun, and close-range defense systems. However, its standard weapons and sensors were not optimized to repel massive attacks from small, high-speed boats. The final strike took place near the Kerch Strait. According to Ukrainian intelligence, a group of Magura V-5 drones hit the stern, as well as the starboard and port sides. Repeated attacks on the same ship gave operators the chance to study its routes, the reaction of the crew, and its defense tactics. Losing the Sergei Kotov also reduced the number of platforms Russia could use to patrol around Crimea and protect transport routes through the Kerch Strait. Yamal and Azov, March 2024. On March 23rd, Ukrainian forces attacked the ships Yamal and Azov, which had undergone repairs at a shipyard just 2 years earlier. Both ships belonged to Project 775. The Ukrainian General Staff reported hitting them during a massive strike on Black Sea Fleet facilities in Sevastopol. Satellite imagery and open-source assessments confirmed activity near their moorings, but the exact extent of the damage to the 2 ships was hard to determine right away. Therefore, it is more accurate to speak of a likely disabling rather than automatically equating every hit to total destruction. The series of strikes on landing ships had a compounding effect. At the start of the invasion, they posed a threat of amphibious landings on the Ukrainian coast and transported cargo between Russian and occupied ports. Following the loss of the Saratov, Novocherkassk, and Cesar Kunikov, along with damage to the Minsk, Olenogorsky Gornyak, Yamal, and Azov, Russia's ability to assemble a large landing force has significantly decreased. Ivan Kurs, March 2024. Initially, Ukraine claimed strikes on the Russian warships Yamal and Azov. But 2 days later, the Ukrainian military reported that 2 more ships of the Russian fleet were hit, including the vessel Ivan Kurs. It was struck on the night of March 24th. The Ivan Kurs is a Project 1828 intelligence ship, commissioned in 2018. It is designed for electronic warfare, communications monitoring, and fleet command support. Such vessels lack heavy strike weapons, but their real value lies in their equipment, antennas, and ability to gather intelligence over long distances. In May 2023, the Ivan Kurs was already targeted by naval drones in the open sea. At the time, the Russian side claimed the attack was repelled, while video footage showed one of the drones very close to the ship. Regarding the March 2024 strike, Ukraine officially reported a successful hit, but independent satellite imagery did not provide a clear picture of the damage. This is another case where the fact of the attack is better known than its actual technical consequences. Konstantin Olshansky, March 2024. The large landing ship Konstantin Olshansky also came under a massive missile strike on March 26th. The ship previously belonged to Ukraine, but Russian forces seized it when they occupied Crimea in 2014. The landing ship Konstantin Olshansky was built under Project 775 and served in the Ukrainian Navy starting in 1996. During the occupation of Crimea in March 2014, the crew held the ship in Donislav until it was stormed by Russian forces. After seizing the vessel, Russia was unable to fully integrate it into its active fleet, while Ukraine continued to consider the ship its own property. According to a Ukrainian Navy spokesperson, the Russian side had begun dismantling the ship for spare parts before the strike. Later, they attempted to restore it due to the loss of other landing vessels. The Ukrainian military reported using a Neptune missile for the attack. This hit carried not just military, but symbolic weight. The Ukrainian ship seized in 2014 was something Russia could never safely use to support the next phase of the war. In May 2024, the minesweeper Kovrovets was destroyed during an attack. This happened on May 19th. This Soviet-era vessel could detect mines at depths of up to 500 feet. It was armed with two 30mm AK-230M naval guns and was equipped with a high-resolution radar system called RIS. The Kovrovets was a Project 26-6M Aquamarine-class seagoing minesweeper. These ships were built with low magnetic steel hulls, which reduced the risk of triggering magnetic mines. They carried gear for finding and clearing various types of mines. Their primary mission was to clear safe routes for larger vessels, protect base approaches, and sweep navigational channels. The Ukrainian General Staff reported the destruction of the Kovrovets on the night of May 19, 2024. The Russian side did not release a detailed damage report for the ship, and independent photos of the aftermath were extremely rare. Because of this, historical timelines rely on the official Ukrainian statement, even though a complete damage assessment for a closed military base usually surfaces much later. Shortly after the Kovrovets was hit, word got out that the small missile corvette Cyclone might have been caught in the strike as well. This turned out to be one of the most significant losses for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The ship was the last Russian missile carrier based in occupied Crimea. The Cyclone had joined the Black Sea Fleet less than a year prior, in July 2023. The boat was launched just 3 years before the attack. Like its sister ship, the Askold, the Cyclone was a Project 2280 Karakurt-class corvette. With a displacement of around 790 long tons, these vessels pack an 8-cell vertical launch system for cruise missiles. The Cyclone was built in the city of Kerch, launched in 2020, and officially commissioned into the fleet in July 2023. According to the Ukrainian General Staff, the vessel was struck in Sevastopol on the night of May 19, 2024. The Ukrainian military later announced that the ship was completely destroyed. Open sources linked the attack to ATACMS ballistic missiles, though the initial official confirmation did not mention the specific weapon used. During its entire time in service, the Cyclone never fired a single missile. Navy spokesman Dmytro Pletenchuk noted that the vessel was essentially never fully finished. The loss or damage of individual ships did not mean the Russian naval threat was completely gone. The Black Sea Fleet still operated submarines, frigates, small missile corvettes, naval aviation, and coastal defense systems. Russia could still launch Caliber cruise missiles from areas far away from the Ukrainian coastline. Novorossiysk remained a major naval base, reinforced with extra patrols and floating barriers. However, the overall result of these operations completely changed how the fleet operated. Russia moved a massive portion of its combat-ready ships out of Sevastopol, shifting them to the eastern part of the Black Sea. The constant risk of port strikes made it incredibly difficult to carry out repairs, load missiles, and plan sorties. The threat of an amphibious landing in Odessa, which was very real in early 2022, significantly decreased. Ukrainian forces successfully pushed large Russian surface vessels out of the western Black Sea. This had an impact beyond just military operations. When Russia backed out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, Ukraine carved out its own maritime shipping corridor, hugging the western coast of the Black Sea. By restricting the movements of the Russian fleet, civilian cargo vessels were finally able to dock at Ukrainian ports again. By April 2024, the British Ministry of Defense reported that Ukraine had either sunk or disabled roughly 1/3 of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The main takeaway from these events is the successful combination of different weapon systems. The cruiser Moskva fell victim to coastal anti-ship missiles. Ships in dry docks were destroyed by long-range precision strikes, while moving targets on the open sea were attacked by groups of naval drones. Intelligence, satellite data, unmanned surveillance, and repeated attacks allowed Ukraine to find weak spots in the defenses of enemy bases and ships. As a result, a fleet that had a massive numerical and firepower advantage at the start of the invasion was forced to operate much more cautiously. Ukraine did not build a traditional blue water navy, but it managed to deny the enemy the ability to safely use the sea. The strategic outcome of this campaign was not just a list of sunken ships, but Russia's complete loss of freedom of maneuver off the Ukrainian coast.